So are you trying to figure out how to be a good parent? Trying to do the right thing, trying to raise your kids? Or maybe you're someone that you don't have any kids and you're going right about now, oh wait, this is that parenting one. I don't need this. But just before you click off, I've got something I want to share with you. I think there's actually stuff that applies across other areas, how we deal with people, potentially even like if you're a boss or work environments. So parents or not parents, I think we've all got some things to learn and grow in. So let's jump right in with a key verse. Psalms 34:11 says, "Come, my children, and listen to me, and I will teach you to fear the Lord." Every single child is unique. And the more kids you have, you start realizing, is it nature? Is it nurture? I don't know, but they're all turning out different. Did I raise them differently? Is their personalities different? But there's also very different ways of parenting. There's one approach to raising children that really produces healthy, mature adults. And here's the deal. I know that it's tough to be a parent, trying the best we can from what we learned from parents or picked up along the way. You're going to eat your things because there's a kid in Africa that, whatever things that we say and the things we do, we as parents later catch ourselves remembering like that's the exact same thing my parents said and did. Or maybe we saw friends doing it. We go, hey, that seems like a good way to try and raise your kids. And so we start saying that thing of like, hey, I'm trying to teach you this. I'm trying to do this. Here's the deal though. We can also become really defensive about raising our kids. And maybe you're going, I don't know, I think I've got it down. I think most parents don't say that, but we're a little bit afraid to examine areas because we go, look, I'm doing the best I can. Look, I'm struggling. And that's an okay place to be too. So whether you feel like you're doing a good job or you feel like you're drowning, I think there's something for you in these next 4 lessons. There's a 10-question quiz in the Parenting Social Salt book. Now, some of you may not have the book, and that's okay. We're going to put it up on the screen so that you can go ahead and grab a piece of paper and go through the quiz also. I want us all to participate. But what the purpose of this quiz is it's going to help you understand your own parenting style. It's going to help you understand how the things you do, the things you say, how that type of parenting may be affecting your kids to the good or to the bad. So if you have the book, or even if you don't, go grab some paper, hit pause, take a couple minutes to answer some of these questions. And we're going to do it based on the way we're parenting now, okay? Because it actually changes over time for most people. The first kid you're super strict with, and next one you're kind of like, hey, not quite as much. And the third one, it's like they're picking stuff up off the floor. You're like, germs are probably good for them. People tend to shift how they raise their different children over time. So if you've got several children, answer the questions based on how you parent your oldest at-home child, okay? So go ahead, hit pause, fill out the book, or do it from the one on the screen. Here we go. So the first thing let's discuss and kind of dig into is, what characteristics would you like your child to have as an adult? Have you ever given any thought to that? Besides, I hope they're wealthy someday so that they can take care of me when I'm old and I'm retired if I didn't make enough money. But besides that, what characteristics would you like your child to have as an adult? Have you thought about that before? I think a lot of times we're focusing on the now and we don't quite think as much about down the road. So do you believe the way you're parenting your child now will affect how he or she will turn out as an adult? So let's look at some internal values that we could consider that might be good things for children to develop in their life. And I don't think most people would disagree with any of these. The first is motivation and confidence. Oh, yeah, that seems like a good thing. Integrity, right? That's a great internal value. And then external behaviors that they have, respect of authority and love for God and others. We go, especially if they could respect my authority, right? Research shows there's a link between the children who exhibit these values and behaviors and the style of parenting that their mothers and fathers use. Specifically, how much acceptance and accountability their parents provide. Acceptance, we define that and we look at it as showing love and support to one's child. And accountability is really defined as directing, correcting the actions of your child when they're doing the wrong thing or they're getting off track. So we're going to look at this graph here. It demonstrates that there's 4 distinct parenting types: high acceptance and high accountability parents, high acceptance and low accountability parents, low acceptance and low accountability parents, low acceptance and high accountability parents. And I think a lot of times we may not even realize where we fall into this graph. Effective parenting is these parents that exercise high levels of acceptance and high levels of accountability, and those children exhibit high levels of motivation and confidence, integrity, respect for authority, and love for God and for others. And then we look at permissive parents. Permissive parents are high levels of acceptance, and these kids know they are loved to death. But these parents, they kind of let some things slide quite a bit of the time. They got low levels of accountability, and these kids demonstrate significantly lower levels of motivation and confidence, integrity, respect for authority, love for God, and others. And it's a poor style to use with our children. Neglectful parenting. This is kind of a heartbreaking one. Children whose mother and father exercise low levels of acceptance and low levels of accountability. Those children demonstrate very low levels of motivation and confidence, integrity, respect for authority, love for God and others. Neglectful type of parenting can be very rejecting, and I think a lot of times it happens because maybe the parents are busy or things are going on, or maybe they didn't really want to have kids. And then there's controlling parents. I think the controlling parent one is a little bit tricky because a lot of times you want to control your kids to do the right thing, right? We've talked about control and how we're not God and how we don't like it when people try and control us. Controlling our child is actually as bad as neglectful parenting because it doesn't produce the right type of results. It actually produces some of the worst results. A lot of times parents who exercise low levels of acceptance but high levels of accountability, they tend to have children who demonstrate the lowest overall levels of the motivation and confidence, integrity, respect for authority, love for God and others. I think a lot of people, without realizing it, kind of fall into that area. That quiz we took a minute ago. Let's take a little bit of time to score our parenting quiz and find out our parenting style. The box with the highest number indicates your current parenting style. And if the numbers are generally higher on the right side of the diagram, you tend to emphasize accountability in your style of parenting. And if your numbers are generally higher on the top half of the diagram, you tend to emphasize acceptance in your parenting. What did you kind of see in your level of parenting? Do you agree or disagree with what you saw on the test? These summaries of the parenting styles, remember we had the effective, that's high acceptance, high accountability; permissive, high acceptance with low accountability; neglectful, that's the low acceptance with low accountability; and controlling, low acceptance with high accountability. And each parenting style actually has certain characteristics and examples in the Bible. We can see in some of the warnings that show our ramifications for our kids and how that's going to turn out. A neglectful parent is characterized by an absence, spending little time with them, forms of abandonment, and that can come across as rejection to a child. And it may not be intentional sometimes. Hey, you're a single mom and you're struggling to find enough time to be with your kids after you're working 2 jobs, or busy with work, you're trying to start a company, or you just don't have time for kids, they're kind of a nuisance or a bother. But neglectful parenting is characterized by this absence of spending little time with them, really is a form of abandonment. So when a mother or father isn't present with the child and the parent can't give either acceptance or accountability, no matter how you really may feel about your child, the reality to that child is that the parent isn't there or they're absent. We can justify, look, I'm being gone because it's necessary for our family, but the reality to the child is the same. Whether we have a good reason as an adult, right? It's tough because when you're the child, you've got a limited amount of knowledge, understanding of the world, and so you just know no one's there for you. A neglectful mother or a neglectful father, they maybe avoid the responsibility of taking care of their children. Or sometimes they try and teach through vaguely communicated commands or maybe a long wandering speech and the kid's just going, I don't get it. The child of a neglectful parent could have the following kind of thoughts. They may be saying to themselves, I'm not important, or what I want isn't important. I went to tell them something that I was hungry, and I don't have to, blah, blah, blah. They may think, why should I care about others? Others don't really care about me. Neglectful parents are a lot like in the Bible, Lot. He was willing to abandon his daughters. We see in Genesis 19:8, there's this whole story, but in the end of it, there's these people in the city, and they go, send these guys out that are in your house, that are visiting. The city goes, look, I have 2 virgin daughters. Do with them as you wish, but please leave these men alone, for they're under my protection. It's like, oh my gosh, that's terrible that he did that. Like sending his daughters out to these men to be abused. He is the example of that neglectful parent. So then let's look at permissive parenting. Permissive parenting is characterized by undercorrection. So that means that there's little attempt by a parent to control the actions of a child. See, the parent may attempt to correct the child, but whatever, it's not a big deal. They allow their children's disobedience to continue. They tell them, hey, don't touch the ceramic chicken on the table, and then the kid goes over and they're like, and they pick it up and look over at the parent and they're like, I didn't care about that anyhow. The permissive parent fears the child's rejection, or they're trying to compensate for the other parent being too strict. They go, hey, the other parent is really coming down on him, so I don't want to come down on him like that. Or maybe they had a parent that was very, very controlling to them and very strict, and so they go, man, I always felt like I was doing the wrong thing. I don't want to be that type of parent. But here's the thing, is these types of parents, permissive parenting creates thoughts in a child like, I can just do what I want. Or they don't really care, because if they did, they wouldn't stop me from doing this. Or maybe they say, if I was really important, how I behave, then they wouldn't forget about what they tell me to do. In the Bible, we see these permissive parents are kind of like Eli, who didn't discipline his sons. In 1 Samuel 3:13, it said, I have warned him continually that judgment's coming for his family because his sons are blaspheming God. Wow, we go, that's kind of a horrible thing that he's just letting his sons get away with that. But how many times do we let maybe children be disrespectful to authority or not hold them accountable? And so suddenly we're becoming that permissive parent. Proverbs 19:18 goes, discipline your children while there's still hope, because if you don't, they'll ruin your lives. I think all of us have known people that have ruined their lives and you just go, man, their parents just let them get away with everything. Their parents let them have parties at their house, and they were like, we'll do drugs with you, drink with you. It's crazy, right? But that happens because they go, well, I don't want my child to feel rejected by me. I want them to feel loved, so I'm just going to let them do whatever they want. But if you tend to provide too little accountability, then you're actually hurting your child. So what's hindering you from providing that accountability for your child? Are you just too busy maybe? Maybe you don't do it intentionally. You just have too much going on, or you fear that your child will reject you. Maybe you attempt to avoid conflict. You're just like, I don't want to deal with that type of thing. It makes me uncomfortable. Or you think the situation or behavior, it's just going to take care of itself. They're going to learn. They're going to get it. So what negative behavior has your child been displaying because of the lack of accountability? They're maybe 2, 3, 4 years old, or they may be quite older, and they've got some real negative behaviors that are coming out because of the lack of accountability. Controlling parenting, it's characterized by overcorrection, by belittling. I can't believe you did that again, criticizing, or being overprotective. This type of parent, we can fall into this trap because I'm trying to tell them the right thing. I'm trying to get them to do it, sort of browbeating them to do what we want them to do. But controlling parenting, it's really showing low acceptance, but this high accountability. And we've talked about that in the different diagrams, right? How the world only accepts us, right, when we're doing all the right things. But yet God accepts us right at the beginning, but he does then hold us accountable. We should parent the way God is wanting to parent us, right? To teach us. So controlling parenting, it includes correction that's really inflexible and harsh. Controlling parents, they interrupt, they ridicule, or they ignore their child. They constantly remind them of the things they did in their past. Well, you realize you can't get this right. All those character failures and weaknesses, it brings that back. Overprotective parents, they try and control their child's choices. So the motive many times is fear, and the result is damage to the child. So that's where I said it becomes a little bit tricky, is we're afraid that something's going to happen if we don't do this, if we don't make them understand and they're not scared of us, we attempt to teach them by using angry, forceful, and demanding statements. And sometimes it's because, we're so frustrated because they didn't listen to us the last times that now it's here comes Mr. Nasty. Now you're going to listen, right? That type of parenting, it drives their kids to do the very things they're trying to get them to avoid. That's what happened in my life. The things that my parents wanted me to avoid, I actually went towards. So the child of a controlling parent over time begins to have thoughts like, I get yelled at for everything I say or do. If I think for myself, if I make a decision on my own, I'm going to get criticized. You know what? I'll just keep my thoughts to myself. I'll get out of here first chance I get. When I'm 18 years old, or maybe if you're in a state that lets you emancipate early, it's like, 16 years old, I'm out of his house. No mistake I've ever made has ever been forgiven. It's never been forgotten. It's just I'm drugged through the mud again every single time. Everything's brought up, that list of my failures. Maybe they think there's no way they can ever please their parents. So what's the use of even trying? And can't they ever just accept me the way I am? Maybe they just go, you know what, I'm a failure. They're right. Controlling parents are kind of like Saul in the Bible. He bullied his son to get what he wanted. In 1 Samuel, in Saul's anger burned against Jonathan, he said to him, you son of a perverse, rebellious woman. Then Saul hurled his spear at him to strike him down. Maybe you've not thrown a spear at your child. Hopefully not. Otherwise, we'd have to call somebody. But that is that type of attitude. We may not have thrown a physical spear, but how many verbal spears, how many eye spears have we shot at those heads? When we're a controlling parent, God's challenge to us really is found in the verse in Colossians 3:21. Fathers and or mothers, don't aggravate your children, because if you do, they're going to become discouraged and quit trying. So here's the thing with these different types of parenting. It ends up with wounded children if it's not right. I don't believe, for the most part, most good parents ever want to wound their children, right? But whether a child is parented by a permissive or neglectful or controlling parent, they feel emotionally wounded and rejected. And those wounded children, they tend to act out in several different ways. And maybe you've seen this in your family. Maybe they have rebellion or open defiances. They're going to come up at you. They're going to talk back. They're going to throw attitude back at you. Maybe they try and get sneaky and they're lying and deceiving so that they don't get caught, so they don't get screamed at, so they don't get any of that. Maybe they just do deliberate disobedience, get involved in drugs or sexual things, maybe just leaving home. You know what? I'm out of here. Joining antisocial groups or crime. I mean, all those things are scary things. We go, I don't want that for my kid, right? Before acting out in these obvious ways, a child might actually start showing us some indicators that are going, hey, I might be ending up down that road, right? And so if we can identify some of these things early, maybe we can buttress and understand our parenting style and our kids' reactions to our parenting style. Have God help us in this process, all right? So maybe your kid has a sorrowful inner attitude, or maybe they're just using really perverse and abusive language. They may have depression, tiredness, they're just shutting down, inability to cope with adversary or things going on in their life. Maybe they have a hardened and sensitive conscience or an uncontrollable temper. Now, there are things that are going on with children, and just because your kid may exhibit a little bit of this, I just want to say this, okay? Because there's some parents right now, they're going, I didn't realize, my kid is, they had a temper tantrum one day and I'm the worst parent. Here's the thing. We're looking at things that as they continue to exhibit in the child's life, those are markers that we can pay attention to and go, hey, how is this maybe as a result of my parenting? But there's things that obviously can go on with kids on a chemical level, or they might have had a bad day at school. Just because you see one of these things, don't let it suddenly throw you for a spiral, but let it be sort of a marker to start going, maybe I need to start paying attention to this. God, is there something that I need to be aware of in my child's life, aware of the ways that I'm parenting them? So have you seen any of these warning signs in them? And do you think, though, if it's not like an occasional thing, that maybe your children have been emotionally wounded or rejected? That's a hard thing to process through. Maybe especially if you're the one parent that hasn't been a part of improper parenting. A lot of times we think that it's easy to just blame the other one, okay? We're both the parent, but if we see that our children have been emotionally wounded or rejected, specifically in some very severe ways by the one parent, maybe we need to get into some counseling. Maybe we need to meet with our pastor, our youth pastor or something, get some healthy boundaries in that relationship. But for you, for your part, okay, ask God to show you in what ways you may be permissive, neglectful, or controlling. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to look at some of the hard things? It's tough, I know, because we're just trying to do the best we can a lot of times. What is God, you think, going to show you? What's he showing you as we're going through this lesson? As this effective parenting style we're going to look at now, we looked at some of the bad ones. You kind of throw your hands up. You're like, I don't know. I give up hope almost at this point. But here's what we're going to talk about is this effective parenting style. And effective parenting, it's characterized by the presence of acceptance and the presence of accountability. Acceptance of your child, but also holding them accountable. And sometimes I think it could almost seem like those are two opposite things, right? But effective parenting is really characterized by treating your child as an important individual, that they matter to you, that they matter to God, and that they're loved. Philippians 2:3 instructs, do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility of mind, regard one another as more important than yourselves. When our kids are running around doing crazy stuff, when they're demanding more of our time, and it's like, I've got stuff I've got to get done. I'm trying to look at the house. It's a mess. And I've got to, I've got work that's due in the morning. It's hard to think of them as more important than ourselves, right? But effective parents, we see an example like Solomon in the Bible, whose parents loved him and taught him God's ways. In Proverbs, it says, for I too was once my father's son, tenderly loved by my mother as an only child. My father told me, take my words to heart, follow my instructions, and you'll live. So we see love and we see instruction. We see him going, hey, this is the way you need to go, the path you're supposed to be on, but also that care and love. So what's the takeaway we have here? Well, we need to ask God to show us how to be a more effective parent. Write it down and be willing to deal with some of that hard stuff. Do an honest examination. Maybe it would take talking to our spouse, talking to them and asking like, hey, where do you see me in this? I graded myself and I go, man, I'm in this category that I didn't think I am. What are some things that you've seen and can you be honest with me? And that requires you being willing to hear, right? They share. It doesn't mean you justify, you excuse, but you just go, okay, I'm going to take what you said. Let me pray about that. Let me think about that. Philippians 2:13, it says, for it's God who works in you both to will and do for his good pleasure. So effective acceptance, effective accountability, we're going to talk more about in the next two chapters. So if you go, man, I don't know how I can get on track. I see all the bad stuff I've done, but I think there's hope in the next couple ones. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, God, we can get done with a lesson like this and be pretty discouraged. We can see that suddenly a lot of the things in our kids' lives make sense. Maybe they're older now at this point. You go, I've done so many things that are wrong. How can I fix that? How can I make it better? How can I get on this path? The moments I'm triggered in my life, that the things that came to me that I was hurt and wounded by, then when they're disrespecting me, I'm insecure of my parenting, so I lash out at my kids. Or maybe I've shut down and just kind of let them do their own thing. Just kind of run their own course. I'm sure they're fine. And in the process, they felt rejected. God, no matter where any of the parents who are watching right now see themselves, God, we know that any of us can any day, in any moment, fall into those categories. But you desire for us to be effective parents. Help us do that in the following chapters. In Jesus' name, amen.